It's Binjang 91.5, and it's time for Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Good afternoon, Matthew.
Phew, how you going with that heat down there, Tony? It's a killer today.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's really, really comfortable here in studio to Binjang, and it's always a delight to talk to you. I've got in first today, by the way, and, well, this afternoon anyway.
Yes.
Can you believe it? So, anyway, a very interesting thing has happened with a young lady who was wearing a smartwatch, and it wound up saving her life, didn't it?
Yeah, and actually I thought it was a young man. Zachary was the person's name.
Oh, okay.
I took Zachary to be a man. I haven't got any details about male or female, but I just went on that assumption that Zachary was a male. But basically, Apple Watch, as many watches do, monitor heart rates. You can use them to track your steps for the day and your exercise. But you've also got features where you can be notified if your heart rate goes unusually low or unusually high. And this particular person, a 25-year-old student, was sitting there and notified that his Apple Watch said he had a heart rate of 210 beats per minute. Now, based on the very loose recommendation by health experts that your maximum heart rate is roughly 220 minus your age, his maximum should have been 195, but that would be when he's hard at work exercising. He was sitting down doing some study and suddenly his heart rate was 210 beats per minute. He thought that was unusual. His watch thought it was unusual. Some friends got him to some medical assistance, and basically he had an atrial flutter, and so he had to have an atrial ablation to correct that. Now, this probably saved his life. If he had have sat there normally and just not noticed that his heart rate was unusually high and hadn't sought treatment as quickly, then that could have been the end of poor young Zachary. So this is where our wearables, the whole wearables market is exploding at the moment. And this is one of those areas where that explosion is happening. We're also seeing it in the age category, if you like, where some people have their emergency pendants. But one of the problems is if you collapse, you fall over, you're injured, you may not be able to actually get to your emergency pendant. Whereas with a watch now, you can have it set up so that if it experiences a certain number of G-forces and then you don't move for 1 minute afterwards, it will automatically ring 000 for you. So that sort of thing, a lot of people are saying, well, that feels safer than having someone have to reach for their emergency pendant. So I think we're going to see this wearables market used for a whole range of leisure activities, but also some of these medical health activities.
What a great thing that is. And what a great story.
Mm.
I have to say I'm very impressed.
My threshold normally goes off on my watch, Tony, when I'm doing Tech Talk because it's so exciting.
Well, why wouldn't it? Why wouldn't it? I mean, you got me to start with.
That's right.
I obviously keep you on your toes. You're probably suffering from anxiety over all of that. I can understand your dilemma there. Now, I've got another curling one for you. No, not really. It's an interesting one. Of course, we had our PM, Prime Minister Scott Morrison. He had a bit of a dilemma in Parliament yesterday, trying to interface with the Parliament using, internet technology on a screen, and things didn't go terribly well, did it?
No, they didn't.
So the question is, I wonder if he's using fibre to the node or fibre to the premises. I can't imagine he'd be using anything else but fibre to the node.
Well, you'd hope they'd give him something a little bit better, wouldn't you? But it was quite amusing, and the opposition party obviously had a bit of a field day with it. But basically, the PM's in quarantine at the moment because he visited Japan's new Prime Minister early this month, so he's in quarantine at the lodge. And he got special permission by the Parliament to come into question time remotely. You normally have to be there at question time, and you can't, in the past, this is the first time ever, someone's been able to come into the Parliament remotely. So he was there ready for question time. And of course, they wanted to show off the technology and show how wonderful it was that the PM was there in question time remotely. So one of his fellow Liberal Party colleagues asked the old Dorothy Dixer about some simple little question, and he started to give his answer and no one could hear him. So the speaker had to actually cut him off. So he said, I can't hear you, Mr. Prime Minister. So he cut him off and said, we'll come back to that. And then they had another go at it. They went back and said, how are we going, Mr. Prime Minister, with our regional allies? And he started off by thanking the House for allowing him to come in virtually, but then he kept talking, and again it was so faint that then it just started. All the sledges from the opposition started. How's your MBN? Have you got fibre to the node? What are you working with there? And that was it. They gave up. They didn't ask the Prime Minister any more questions. They gave up because effectively they thought there's no point asking him any questions because we can't hear the responses. What was amusing...
Might have been deliberate. I think it must have been deliberate.
He might have had the volume turned down deliberately, who knows. But for all these kids out there doing their schoolwork remotely, they're all able to cope with it. You would have thought that surely someone in the Prime Minister's office would have been able to set it up and maybe even test it beforehand might have been an important thing, but a bit embarrassing for the PM.
They might have had a Labor Party supporter who was a technician too, you never know.
Who knows?
But it just goes to show, it's just not the NBN, it's the technology trail all the way through from one end to the other, and anything in there, including a server, could be the problem. Who knows?
Yeah, that's right.
Anyway, so there's one fascinating man in this world. We all know who it is. It's Elon Musk when it comes to technology, and he has done some amazing things. Now, we were just talking probably 6 months ago, or maybe longer, we were talking about how Tesla had only just overtaken Toyota in value, as became the biggest, by capitalisation, the biggest car manufacturing in the world. And 6 months before that, it was half the value of Toyota.
Yeah.
Where's the whole thing at now? It's fascinating, isn't it?
It is fascinating. So a few things. You're quite right, Tony. At the beginning of the year, the valuation of Tesla was about 80 billion, which was less than half that of Toyota. And for many people, they thought, well, that's a pretty good valuation for Tesla because they're producing a minuscule number of cars compared to Toyota. Well, jump forward till now, and this bit of data is as of yesterday, so it's as up to date as yesterday. Tesla is now valued at $550 billion US dollars. So it went from 80 billion at the beginning of the year to 550. And based on Elon's shares in Tesla, he's now just snuck past Bill Gates as the second richest person in the world. And when you start to compare Tesla then against some other major manufacturers, and I just went and looked down the list of the largest manufacturers in the world by market capitalisation, if you add together Toyota and Volkswagen and Audi and Mercedes-Benz and General Motors and BMW and Ferrari, you get those seven to get past the value, those seven combined to get past the value of Tesla. What is interesting though, and when some people question the valuation of Tesla, is that you add those seven together, the profitability of those seven each year, and based on the latest financial results, those seven produce about $35 billion in profit. This year, Tesla might top 1 billion. At the moment, they're less than 1 billion in annual profit. So even though you've got the same valuation, they're 1/35th as profitable. So people have got a lot of trust and faith in what can happen in the future. But obviously, a lot of the time you invest in the share market, you invest on that based on the profits that company's generating. At the moment, I think there's a lot of people investing based on the fact that they hope the price will keep going up. But they've certainly been innovative. They've been innovative in their cars. They've changed the world in cars. They're certainly working on changing the world in battery technology. So people are investing in that. And good luck to Elon. Good luck to Tesla. Of course, Elon didn't start Tesla, but he came and invested in the early days of Tesla. He saw what was the writing on the wall, I suppose. So good luck to them for that. But again, it's probably overvalued at the moment. But while it's changing the world, then let it keep going.
Yeah, of course, with Telstra, a bit like Amazon, they're ploughing a lot of their money straight back into the growth of their company overseas and everywhere. Well, they've had a massive investment in China, surprisingly enough, in a manufacturing plant over there.
Yeah.
And elsewhere. So.
And China at the moment has got 4.9% of annual sales as EVs, which is much better than our 0.6%. But that 4.9% of annual sales out of China equates to more cars, over 1 million cars, and that's basically the same number of cars that we sell in Australia in total. So the Chinese market, you don't need to get much of a market share in the Chinese market. So keep in mind that if 4.9% are there with EVs at the moment, you've got another 95% of that market to take over probably in the next 10, 15 years before it becomes completely electric. So Tesla sees a huge opportunity there.
Yeah, look, interesting about the China thing, MG, which is owned by a Chinese company, as you would well know, has put out the cheapest EV, and they're going to be exporting it into Australia. It doesn't have a great reputation for quality, that particular brand. But certainly the Chinese are pushing pretty hard on EVs now.
Yeah.
It costs 10,000 more actually for the EV than it does for their baseline MG. It's interesting how this is all going to go, particularly under the current circumstances of sovereign risk of buying anything and having it serviced and finding parts from a country like China, let alone exporting anything there.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how the market receives China under the current circumstances. I know there's a lot of pushback.
Yeah, and I think there's a whole range of things at play there, Tony, as you say. When you look at the valuation of Tesla, when you look at what China's doing, say with the MG, when you look at other major manufacturers around the world, anyone that thinks that EVs aren't going to dominate the world landscape, as I say, probably within the next decade, is dreaming or is in the oil,
Absolutely.
or is in the oil industry themselves.
Well, I mean, look, let's face it. It's not an emotional argument. Technology is technology. It keeps on advancing and everybody takes it up. So it's just inevitable that's going to happen. Anyway, you're listening to Tech Talk with Matthew Dickinson on Binjang 91.5. Stick around next week for the morning session and the afternoon session. Same day, same place, same time, same station, with all the great news and all the great music that we play. Thanks, Matthew.
Thanks, Tony. Talk to you next week.